Hello, everyone. How's everybody? Good to be here today. I'm joined by Council President Miguel Melendez, our Commissioner of Department of Recreation and Human Services, Shirley Green, Special Advisor to the Mayor on Violence Prevention Services Programs, Victor Saunders, and Dr. Kaya Nyami, who leads our Office of Neighborhood Safety. You know, I was saying to someone earlier that sociologists will go back and look at the years during the pandemic and really give us a thumbnail sketch of all of the things that were happening. We ended last year with an unprecedented level of homicides, 81, 419 shootings. And as I said at a conference 2 weeks ago, my first year here has been sobering. When you have a 14-year-old kid killed, a 3-year-old shot, and the wanton violence that we saw yesterday on North Clinton that left one person dead. Again, I want to reiterate my condolences and the condolences of all of the city to those individuals and those individuals and their families who have lost their life. We can never, as a community, stop saying that violence is unacceptable. Because it seems to be so frequent, it is often easy for us to turn our eyes and forget about it. And I was saying to Councilmember Melendez, who I talk to regularly in his role as Council President, is that we can't stop talking about it. But in that talk, we also have to make sure that we have action. So today, for this public safety press conference, I want to give 2 brief updates. The first one will be on the police chief search, and then the second one will be changes that I'm making as it relates to our violence prevention programs. First off, with the details of the permanent police chief search, first off, I want to thank Interim Chief Dave Smith for all of the work that him and his team are doing in terms of holding down the police department while we do our national search for a police chief. As you know, we have engaged public sector search and consulting. As you know, I talk regularly about trust and transparency. We want to make sure that we do an open and transparent search. The CEO, Gary Peterson, a former police chief himself, is helping with this search, and he will be working to ensure that we have significant input from our community. The community process will be extremely important. We have already engaged the process. It's already begun with many city officials already being interviewed. Members of City Council, myself, and others in the city have already been interviewed as we go through this process. And we want to make sure that we get lots of input from our citizens. City residents, as part of this process, are encouraged to fill out our survey at the city's website to share your thoughts. The survey will be up today through February 4th. February 4th also happens to be my birthday, so if anyone wants to bring gifts, feel free to drop them off, any candy that you may want to stop by. So, and then in February, we want to have neighborhood focus groups. We will have neighborhood focus groups on the search process. And after that, the firm will identify qualified candidates to conduct comprehensive screenings, and then we'll have multiple rounds of interviews. So that's where we are at with the search process. I get asked all the time, did you find a police chief yet? Did you find a permanent police chief yet? So this is the process that I wanted to lay out. And then all in all, we want to include all the input sessions, and we expect the search to be completed hopefully by the spring. If not before, but by the spring, we want to make sure that it's completed by then. Secondly, I wanted to share some more immediate news and updates as it relates to public safety, and in particular, the work that Victor Saunders will be doing as my Special Advisor of Violence Prevention Services. We've been in office for 20 days, and Victor has hit the ground running. I'm working all of my folks very hard, and as you heard at the press conference earlier, I chose Victor because we need him now more than ever to make sure that we centralize, coordinate, and organize all of our violence prevention services. We need more collaboration and coordination. We have to make sure that our Office of Neighborhood Safety has the support. We got to make sure that Kaya, Dr. Nyami, who's been holding it down as a party of one, has the support and coordination that he needs, which is why I am centralizing all of the city violence prevention programs under the mayor's office. All of them will be under the mayor's office and led by Victor. This will include Pathways to Peace, the Office of Neighborhood Safety, and the Peacemaker Fellowship. All of these things were previously under the Department of Recreation and Human Services, and as you can see, I have our commissioner here because they still will play an absolutely critical role. Because you can't talk about human services without talking about violence, and you can't talk about anti-violence without talking about human services. And when we talk about job creation, when we talk about neighborhood empowerment, when we talk about young people being involved in meaningful activities, all of these partners have to be together. And collaboration, as you all know, is one of the top tenets of the Evans administration, that we work to collaborate across sectors to ensure that we get good results. And that's what you see demonstrated here. Victor Saunders and Dr. Shirley Green have been working at the hip for the last 20 days and also helped me make this decision in terms of making sure that we centralize violence prevention efforts. Victor will be leading the charge with all additional future investments in prevention efforts, and we will take our violence reduction efforts to the next level. This is also something that is a passion of our City Council President, Miguel Melendez. Before he was City Council President, he worked very hard in the Northeast to work to reduce violence, deal with the drug epidemic that we had there. So I want to invite our Council President to come and say a few words, and then I'll come back and introduce Victor Saunders. President Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. So first and foremost, I just want to acknowledge that there's been great work by some of my council colleagues, both on the community level in neighborhoods. I'd like to honor Council Member Willie Lightfoot, who has led the Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition, as well as many other public safety related efforts as the chair of public safety, and new members of council who are coming in with fresh ideas in the space of public safety. From the perspective of violence prevention, I view public safety in a more holistic manner. I think we cannot just look at it from the lens of what does law enforcement do. It also is what does the community do, what programs can we put in place, how do we reach people, how do we build relationships, how do we have a new context for public safety in the city of Rochester. And I'm excited about the announcements today because I think this is a step in the direction of trying to centralize and coordinate efforts, and we need to continue to do this as we move forward. Public safety on the council level, we are committed. And one of the things we have in committee this month is actually to split public safety from recreation and human services in the committee structure so that we can have a dedicated focus on public safety matters, both legislatively, and I think from a resource perspective, we want to make sure that we're putting our money where our mouth is. The pandemic, as Mayor Evans described, has presented many new challenges for us, and one of which is making sure that we properly invest in the issues that have come out of the pandemic. It's no surprise, or I shouldn't say surprise, but it's been a tremendous challenge to see the violence increase in the last 2 years. We had 51 homicides. When I first joined council, I was only on 3 months, and we had 51 homicides that year, and to see us jump up at least 30 in the last year has been problematic for us. So I just want to reiterate, we are committed. We want to provide the resources. We want to support Mayor Evans and administration here in trying to figure this out, but it's going to take the community. I want to reiterate that. It's going to take the community playing a significant role. Government cannot solve this by ourselves, and we need all of your help to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, President Melendez. And also, I want to give thanks to all of the organizations that are out there that are working on violence prevention. We look forward to working with the plethora of organizations and agencies that are working. We hope that we can help organize, centralize, and provide resources to those organizations and provide incentives as they work together. And you will hear more about that in the coming weeks and months ahead, is how are we able to use some of our funds to be able to incentivize violence prevention programs that are coordinating. And we have great tables that have been created. Councilmember Melendez mentioned Councilmember Willie Lightfoot, his work with the Rock Against Gun Violence. That is a coalition of a broad base of a lot of the organizations that are there that Mr. Saunders will be working with. Pathways to Peace, which has been around for many years and here in the city. And I can go on and on. SNUG, Save Our Youth. There are so many organizations that are doing great things. But I wanted to allow Victor, who will be leading the charge with additional future investments and efforts, to come and say a few words, and then I'll come back and take questions from folks about this topic. So, Mr. Saunders.
Good afternoon. As the mayor stressed, the first 20 days of this administration, we've been very busy. As a precursor to my first day, unfortunately, the 14-year-old that he had referenced was a former student of mine at school number 8, Julius Greer. Unfortunately, that was the night before I was to start my current position. And with that, it definitely let me know that my focus has to be intentional and to the point. Excuse me. During the past few weeks, I have spent most of my time meeting with numerous community organizations, Rock the Peace, Rise Up Rochester, SNUG, and other community partners. You know, one thing about it, we have those entities that are actually on the ground doing phenomenal work, and we look to support them. With that, you heard people say that it's going to take the community. Well, the community has stood up. We have numerous natural helpers within the community that have contacted our office wanting to be mentors, wanting to be trainers to young people, and offer their expertise and mastery in different skill sets to be able to help some life changes take place among the young people that need to be served. I'm excited to oversee the city programs that we have in place currently, Pathways to Peace, the Office of Neighborhood Safety, and the Advanced Peace Peacemaker Fellowship. Not only are we going to be centralizing city resources under the mayor's office, but we're going to be aligning with crucial community organizations in order to do this work. We already understand that work is being accomplished. They just need a little more assistance, but we will be very cohesive in our approach to bring all the different violence prevention programs together. We will be very collaborative, and hopefully with that cohesive approach, will affect more of a change in the aspect of violence reduction in the city of Rochester. We will have quantifiable data that we can look at and recognize that we have affected a positive change in the community over time. Moving forward, our efforts will be to have a greater impact on the community. We hope to expand and create meaningful programs similar to what we have done previously here in the city of Rochester. If you are a resident of the city, you've seen programs like Prime that have come through previously, and that is providing real incentives for meaningful employment. With that program, we were able to employ numerous individuals to work in the tool and die field, and some still do to this day. And we are still in contact with certain individuals, so that's a wonderful thing. You know, I appreciate the mayor's commitment to this anti-violence effort, supporting it through restructuring and future investments, both public and private. And at this time, we want to let the community know that we are focused, and there's nothing that's going to deter us as we move forward in this endeavor to decrease the violence currently seen in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take questions, I just want to say one other thing to the community. You know, this is an extremely powerful tool, the cell phone. Almost everyone has one. And we want to say, you can dial 311, you can call Pathways to Peace, you can call the Office of Neighborhood Safety, you can call Victor on his phone at City Hall. If you feel as though your child, because we're seeing so many young people involved in negative behavior, if you feel as though you are losing control of your child and you think that they are involved with a group that might be steering them down the wrong direction, or you think that they may have access to firearms, and I read the reports every night, there are 18-year-olds that are people that are 18 and younger in this city that have access to firepower that some people who have served in the military or maybe police officers don't have access to. Pick up the phone, and call us. If you are a young person that feels as though you are being challenged or put in a position that will make you make a decision that you may not be able to take back, pick up the phone and call us. If you are a witness of a crime and you feel as though you are under attack and you need to get away for a while, you need to disappear because you feel as the life of your family or you is threatened, pick up the phone and call us. That is the only way that we will make changes in our community, is by the community participating in those that feel as though they may be in a position where they may feel unsafe or they may have seen something. We want to be able to support that. But long term, we understand that in order to reduce violence, that this is going to take a community approach, and that it's going to take all of the things that Victor mentioned and the things that, that President Melendez mentioned. Jobs, opportunity, and creating assets for our young people to make sure that we steer them down the right path. So with that, I will take a couple of questions. I see they brought the heavy hitters today. I haven't seen Berkeley at a press conference in a while, and I see Mr. The beer guy is here. Yeah. Absolutely. The city is a safe place to live, work, and visit. And let's be clear. If you look at the data, and we look at data all the time, and Vic can tell you this, the vast majority of the people that commit most of the crimes, it is a small percentage. So let's be clear. The city is a safe place to visit. Someone emailed me this morning, and I reassured them. I said, listen, you're always going to have challenges. We're always going to have challenges. But we are still a safe city. In any urban environment, you will have crime. But the key is that we have to make sure that we don't accept it. We have to make sure that we don't say that it is a matter of course. So there are individuals, a small percentage, that are that do a disproportionate amount of the crime. But it is not widespread. It is not everyone in Rochester. Remember, the city of Rochester in Monroe County has over 700,000 residents. This is a small percentage of folks that are doing that. But it's important for us to make sure that we zero in on that, because that is extremely, extremely important. Yeah, okay, let's go back here with, is that Seth? Yep. Yeah, I think one of the big differences is that I think the centralization is key, but also really engaging community partners in a turbocharged way. That has to be totally different. And then the other thing is the carrot. If you're able to incentivize folks, money talks, so we're going to have to make the investments. We're going to have to make the investments. And if the city doesn't have all the dollars to make the investments, we're going to have to go to foundations and private sectors in order to help us do that. Because I also want people to understand, the other thing is that when I look at public safety, I also look at it as an economic development tool. I always give the analogy where I say any police officer is also the chief economic development agency. So in addition to Vic being in charge of anti-violence programs, even though he doesn't have the title of economic development, he's key in our economic development. Any of our youth development programs that we invest in, any of the work that Shirley does over at the Department of Recreation and Human Services, those are all tools that we have to look at it differently. And that's the way we're looking at public safety. And I've been consistent with this. I said it in my inaugural address. I said it all throughout last year, that public safety and economic development go together like hand in glove. And that's the different approach. Because whenever we talk about any of these issues, we have to make sure that we look at it through a public safety lens. Mr. Cleveland, did you have anything?
I do.
Yes, Mr. Cleveland.
So you're talking about some of these programs that are going to have, a long-term lens, long-term look at what's going to happen. So, Seth kind of hit on it before. We've heard a lot
Yep.
about some of this stuff in the past. But so, how should the community then judge whether these efforts are working?
Great question.
What they should be given to show results? Because
Yep.
Like what metrics are you going to be using, especially in the short term?
Yes.
To gauge the success.
Excellent question. I didn't pay him to ask that. I think that is exactly the point. And I think that number one is obviously homicides. We want to see those go down. But that's not the only metrics. The other metrics is how many young people are working. How many young people, if they take a survey, now feel as though they have access to a caring adult, a quality youth development program, or some type of extracurricular activity that is keeping them out of trouble? Right? So you have to look at those other types of metrics in addition to that. How much money are we spending on a program, and what's the return been? Are we seeing higher job placements for young people that are involved in those programs? Are we seeing an individual X, if they're going through that program, are they now off parole or no longer have a propensity to want to pick up a gun? These are all things that can be measured. So your question is right on the money. We have to make sure that we use data and make data-driven decisions. And then the other thing is that we have to make sure is that we are honest with ourselves and are transparent. If something isn't working, I'm going to come and tell you that it's not working, and we need to try something different. And I might say we spent $500,000 on it and it didn't work. I hope that won't happen, but we have to be honest. And if something's not working, we need to cut it off immediately and try something different. The other thing that we need to make sure that we do is to use multiple tools in our toolbox in order to tackle this problem. It can't just be using one thing. Sometimes people will say, oh, if you just do one thing, if you just give everybody one job, that'll do it. No. There's also a mental health component. There's also a youth development component. There's a school component. There's a whole family approach. There's a homelessness approach. So we have to use multiple tools in our toolbox in order to be able to solve this problem. I saw you had your hand up for a while. I'm going to go to you and then take the two over here. Yes. And just tell me your name because I'm not familiar with you. Oh, yes, sir.
According to a study from the Attorney General's office, disproportionate amounts of guns are coming into New York State from out of state.
Yes.
Specifically, Iron Pipeline. Is there a ban in place to maybe talk to those other states? And how do you feel like it's fair that the Rochester community has to suffer from out-of-state gun crimes from guns that should be in the state?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked the question about the Iron Pipeline, and I hope that we can get an update on that report that was done a couple of years ago by the Attorney General. And for those of you that do not know, the question was about the Iron Pipeline. The Iron Pipeline, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, up 95, the guns come into Rochester, and they are used in crimes. I mention this all the time to our federal partners. Anything related to addressing the Iron Pipeline, we will have to obviously work with our state Attorney General, and that office did that report, which was absolutely excellent. And then we also need to make sure that we work with our federal partners. And that is another level, and that's another piece of it. We absolutely have to work with all levels of government to be able to solve this problem, because the illegal guns that make its way into the community, it's very hard for us to do that in Rochester alone, and we're going to absolutely have to work with our federal partners. Great question. Let's go here and there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So going into the change about who these programs are reporting to, like it says Pathways to Peace, Homes to Neighborhood Safety, Peacemaker Fellowship will report directly to Saunders and be kind of centralized under the mayor's office. Can you give, I guess, a little bit of detail about what changes you hope that brings, instead of them, I guess, working on their own? How does centralizing it under the mayor's office create new changes? Because some might be skeptic that they're not going to do anything if they don't have your approval on this.
Well, absolutely. But number one, I want to make sure that I have my nose in their business. Now, I'm not saying when things aren't in the mayor's office, it doesn't happen, but it makes it clear that it is a priority of the mayor, and it is a major priority of mine, because I grew up in this community. So it's important that they have the support. That's important. But more importantly, it's important that it also allows us to coordinate with the external forces, because the mayor obviously works with the federal government, the state government, our local delegation, all of the organizations that are out there. The mayor's office, we are kind of the repository for all of these things. So it makes sense that they're centralized so we can help with coordination and collaboration with the external forces as well to make sure that we're rolling in the same direction. So what's different is that it gives us the opportunity to really be able to be on the forefront and to make sure that everyone is coordinating, but more importantly, collaborating. Because when we are apart, we might be able to accomplish some things, but when we are together, we will accomplish so much more. So it allows for better coordination and deployment of resources quickly when necessary. Currently, the police chief is also reporting to the mayor's office, so that also helps with that coordination as well. So it allows us to look at this from a holistic approach in terms of coordination. Yes, sir. Can you speak up just a little bit?
Yeah.
Yep.
Children are being shot, multiple shootings are happening during the daylight. We even saw someone shooting at police last night. How do
Well, I think you say a prayer, and again, I think that I'd like to remind folks that it is still a small number of people that are doing that. And one of the things that we have to do as part of our strategy, and Mr. Saunders knows that I talk about this all the time, is we have to zero in on the people who have the propensity to do these things. And there are markers of folks that I won't. It's a long way to go into detail, but you can tell the path that people are taking. But once a person dies, that's too late. So what we want to say in terms of our prevention efforts is, how do we get them in the Peacemaker Fellowship? How do we get them involved in the Office of Neighborhood Safety before they go and do that shooting? When they're in a body bag and that mother and father is over that coffin crying, that's too late. So what we're saying is we want to try to get ahead of that before that happens. And that is what is important. Also, there are spots that need to be zeroed in on. There are individuals that need to be zeroed in on, and they need to be given choices. Listen, you had this challenge. Here's an opportunity for a job program for you. If you don't take this job program, here's somebody who went down your path. Talk to them. And they can tell you that it was a rough road. You don't have to do what they did. And as an alternative, we're just not going to say, oh, don't do it. We're going to say, as an alternative, here's a job. As an alternative, here's some mental health counseling. As an alternative, here's a mentor of someone who was where you were, and here's where they are now, and here's where you can be. So that's got to be different. But I want to reiterate again, because sometimes there's a perception of cities that people are violent. Remember, violent crime has dropped across the country over the last 30 years. It's still at the lowest levels. Now, we've seen a spike during the pandemic. It's still not as high as it was in the 90s, and I remember that because I was a part of Rochester Challenge Against Violence and all those things. But it's still at a level that is totally unacceptable. It's still at a level that is totally unacceptable. And we want to make sure that we are proactive. There's always going to be crime. I'm not going to say there's not going to be crime. But the question is what are we doing to make sure that we address it? And that's what that is what we hope that these efforts will do. And then when it's not working, guess what? I'm going to stand right here and say what we tried is not working, so here's what we're going to do next. We're not going to just hold on to something and think that we're going to hold on to it if we think it's not working. And that's why I like these folks that are standing up here, because they're honest enough to say, hey, here's what we need to do to recalibrate. Last question? Okay, last question. All right, last question, and then Will gets the last one. Yes. You ever work in government? Okay, so this is under the mayor's office. So this will allow the mayor to be more actively involved in this process. But we also want to make sure that when you have a mayor's advisor on violence reduction services, why would the mayor advisors on violence reduction services be in the mayor's office? And then you have programs that do violence reduction services in another area. So we're bringing them together to make sure that we can have the synergy. So Victor will be able to be intimately involved in all these violence reduction services. So that's why we're making that structural change. It will help with coordination, it will help with collaboration, and it will help with implementation. PIC is under DRHS still, yes. Mr. Cleveland.
Yes. Okay. So we've heard from a number of community members with their concerns of actually wanting like greater police presence, with patrols and then obviously faster response times. And then we've seen also some of these staffing shortages with RPD, where it's
Over 80 openings right now.
Exactly. So what's being done then to address those openings and
Yeah.
kind of lead to some more success in that area?
Another great question, and I think that you have to have a balance, right? So we have to make sure that we address the large number of openings that we have open in the police department. We have to make sure that we work on our deployment and make sure that people are deployed in areas where we are seeing requests from neighbors, and you are correct, there are a lot of neighbors who just want to see a presence. So how do you do that? But then we also have to make sure that we make those long-term investments that I talked about earlier that will ultimately lead to less violence, less crime. And by doing that, I think that we are striking the proper balance of getting involved and out front, but also the intervention piece in terms of intervening in situations that happen. The intervention piece, that's like going to the emergency room. The patient is already bleeding. You got to stop the bleeding. But what we want to beef up are our preventative efforts to make sure that we are able to stop things before they happen, and that's the longer term. Thank you all so much for being here. we look forward to continuously providing updates on these items. I want to thank my colleague, President Melendez, for joining me, and stay tuned for future updates. And everyone have a great weekend. Thank you.